Dave is a 30-year-old unemployed man who spends his entire day working on a cardboard maze. He claims that he is a good artist, but he has never made anything useful. In the first scene, we are shown a recorded clip of Dave's interview, where he states that he built the maze because he wanted to prove himself. He also regretfully accepts responsibility for the people that died because of it. The movie then flashes back to 3 days in the past. Dave's girlfriend, Annie, returns back from a trip. She notices a giant structure made of cardboard boxes in her living room. When she calls out for Dave, he responds from inside the box. He welcomes her back home and tells her that he built the labyrinth all by himself. Annie then excuses herself and goes to take a shower. However, when she returns, she sees that Dave is still in the box. He explains that he has been working on the box all weekend and he has lost his way. Puzzled, Annie reminds him that it's just cardboard and he can easily come out of it by knocking them over. However, Dave claims that the structure is much bigger from the inside and he doesn't want to tear it down because it took him so long to make it. Annie grows impatient and she proceeds to enter, but Dave forbids her, saying that it's too dangerous. Frustrated, she starts to shake the cardboard boxes. However, this causes the things inside the structure to fall over and Dave starts screaming, pleading with her to stop. Annie backs down, but she insists on coming in. However, Dave once again forbids her, saying that she will be lost. Looking at the situation, Annie asks how long he has been inside the cardboard and the latter replies that it's been 3 days. Annie, who has become worried at this point, suggests he break the structure down, but Dave is adamant on finding another way. Hence, left with no options, Annie calls his friend, Gordon, for help. After a while, Gordon comes over and Annie explains everything to him. From inside the box, Dave also mentions that no one should come inside yet as the maze isn't complete. He then explains the beauty of the structure, saying that he started from the center and built outward like a seashell. As Annie and Gordon discuss the situation, the latter mentions that it's very typical of Dave to start something and leave it unfinished. They also wonder where he is defecating inside. Dave overhears the conversation and responds that he actually hasn't eaten in 3 days. Hearing this, Annie gets worried, so Gordon tries to lift the cardboard. But just then, things start to shake violently, as if there is some sort of machine inside the maze. Left with no choice, Gordon decides to seek help from their mutual friend, Leonard. However, he ends up calling others too. The others include Harry the journalist and his crew, siblings Greg and Bryn, over-enthusiastic Jane, 2 Belgian tourists and a homeless man. Sounds like a start of a joke. Dave warns everyone against breaking or entering the maze, saying that it's too dangerous because of the obstacles and booby traps. This frustrates Leonard and he decides to return home as Dave refuses to let him help. In the next scene, Annie starts to worry and Dave apologizes to her for putting her through this. He says that he misses her and although she is upset with him, she admits that she too misses him. Annie finally has had enough and she decides to go inside the maze to bring him out. This is music to Harry's ears and he starts to film everything for his documentary. When others learn about Annie's adventure, everyone except the homeless man decides to give her company. Once the group enters, they all realize that Dave was telling the truth and the structure is much bigger than it looks from outside. Gordon also gets a taste of the maze when he accidentally slits his finger and his blood is strongly absorbed by the cardboard floor. Jane and the others start to explore the maze on their own while Harry and his crew follow Annie and Gordon around. They look for Dave but soon realize that the maze is more complicated than they thought. As they try to figure out their path, Harry comes across a button on the wall with a warning against pressing it. However, he nonchalantly presses it, and the next second, Gordon is hit with a ball. Next, the group comes across a hallway which leads to a musical room. The room has keyboards painted on the wall. However, they discover that they can venture into the wall through the black keys. The wall leads the group to a pit full of discarded paper with 2 origami birds watching over them from the balcony. Soon, one of the birds lunges at them, sending everyone into a panic mode. The door to the room also closes and Annie starts looking for another way out. She notices a giant face sculpture on the wall and helps everyone escape through its mouth. Annie is shaken by the ordeal and she struggles to cope with the fact that the origami are alive. Harry tries to film her reaction on camera but they are soon interrupted by Jane, who comes running into the room. She excitedly tells everyone that she is having fun exploring the maze. But right then, she mistakenly steps on a booby trap. The trap activates and her head is separated from her body, much to everyone's horror. However, instead of blood, yarns and confetti spill out of Jane's body. Witnessing this, everyone panics and runs out of the room. The scene then cuts to Greg and Bryn playing hide and seek inside the maze by themselves. Unfortunately, in the process, Greg mistakenly activates another booby trap and he is sandwiched between the wall and a spiked grill, instantly killing him. Shortly after, Bryn notices his dead body, much to her horror. Elsewhere, Annie starts to get upset and complains why Dave built the booby traps. Gordon explains that without the traps, the maze would simply be a series of articulated hallways. Soon, they are joined by a frightened Bryn. She reveals what happened to Greg and takes everyone to the place where he was killed. However, to everyone's astonishment, Greg's body is found missing and a trail of blood and giant footsteps are leading out of the room. After examining the scene, Gordon deduces that the footsteps belong to a man-eating half-bull half-human monster called the Minotaur. Annie finally has had enough and she decides to make a hole through the cardboard wall with a knife to get everyone out of the maze. Lo and behold, wind starts to blow and they hear loud noises as if they are trying to stop her from tearing open the wall. Annie eventually succeeds but only to realize that there's another room on the other side of the wall. Sensing the incoming danger, Annie and others quickly venture into the room but something catches the attention of Bryn and she stays back. Everyone asks her to come but with a swift move, the giant monster swoops her up, killing her. Afraid for their lives, the group flees the scene and they finally run into Dave. Annie then leads them through a small door which takes them to a strange room consisting of a table and chair made of cardboard paper. After reaching safety, Annie and Dave get into an argument and everyone blames him for their predicament. Dave mentions that he warned them against entering, but nonetheless, he promises to get them out. He then asks everyone to follow him into a secret door but ends up leading them through a pipe which turns them into cardboard characters. Annie and the others demand answers from Dave and he assures them that it's going to be okay after they get back to the apartment. But right then, the giant shows up, prompting the group to run for their lives. Dave leads them out of the room, and this time, something good finally happens. When they cross a tunnel, they all come out in their normal form. The Minotaur also follows them outside, but Dave builds a temporary wall to turn him away. In the next scene, the situation again starts to heat up. Everyone wants to escape the maze and they all start to argue with each other. When things get out of hand, Dave steps up and reveals that in order to escape, they have to complete building the unfinished maze. However, Annie refuses to let him continue and instead orders him to lead them out of the maze. Dave reluctantly agrees and as they try to find a way out, they come across a strange wall. Surprisingly, Dave notes that he doesn't recall building it. Meanwhile, Leonard returns home and he too enters the maze. Unfortunately, the first thing he sees is the Minotaur's axe and Jane's severed head lying on the ground. As he walks away, it's shown that a giant origami insect has clung onto his back. Elsewhere, Dave takes Annie and others to the entertainment room where he shows them the old British entertainment. He then takes them to another peculiar room with a strange enticing opening on the wall. It has a hypnotizing effect and Annie and the others are drawn towards it. However, Dave warns them to stay away from it. When others don't listen to him, Dave reveals his hand, which has turned into cardboard after he stuck his hand into the opening. The group then continues their journey, only to realize that the maze has started to grow by itself. Overwhelmed by the strange incidents, Dave loses it and calls for everyone's help in killing the giant so that he can finish building the maze and finally head home. Unfortunately, the group turns the idea down, and even in such a horrible situation, Harry suggests taking Dave's interview for the documentary. The latter reluctantly agrees but he pours his heart out during the interview. He admits that he hates himself for being an unemployed 30-year-old who is still dependent on his parents for everything. It turns out he built the maze so people including his parents could realize that he too can do something. He also apologizes for the people that died in the maze. Hearing his emotional outburst, Annie becomes emotional and promises to help him get out of the maze. The group then starts thinking about the escape plan again with a newfound interest. Gordon notes that since the maze is somehow alive and growing, it must have a heart which they could find and kill. Dave agrees and says that everything usually has a weak spot but unfortunately, he didn't build one for the maze because he didn't want anyone to destroy it. In response, Gordon comments that Dave didn't finish the maze because you can't fail if you don't finish anything. However, Annie empathizes with her boyfriend and explains that everyone has to deal with failure and it's a part of life. She then encourages him to build the chrysalis so they could destroy it and get out. Following this, Dave and the group again start exploring the maze and they come across Bryn who was killed earlier. She has now turned into a paper toll and is tied to the wall. Bryn asks the group for high fives but knowing that it's most likely a trap, they refuse to give her one. Dave and Annie continue to look for their destination while Gordon and the rest stay behind to distract Bryn. In the next scene, Dave and Annie walk for several minutes until they come across a dark tunnel. The movie then cuts to a scene where Dave and Annie are having a conversation where Annie continues to play the role of a successful woman while Dave stays a bum. The scenario keeps changing but they are still happy to be together. Back in the dark tunnel, the couple reaches the center of the maze. They then start to build the heart of the maze. After completing it, Annie uses a sword to hack through the cardboard wall. Gordon and others sense this and they promptly tie up Bryn to keep her from attacking Annie. However, Bryn transforms into a giant hand and retreats back to the ground. In the process, the cameraman
not good.
Gets dragged into it, but not before he heroically saves all his equipment. The rest of the group then proceeds to join Annie and Dave at the center. However, on their way there, Gordon gets separated from others when he is chased by the giant Minotaur. Annie and Dave set up the heart as Harry and his team capture the moment. As the heart comes alive, the Minotaur continues to chase Gordon, during which he witnesses Leonard getting killed by cardboard blades. Back at the center of the maze, Dave strikes the heart with the sword and destroys it. Finally, the entire thing starts to fall apart and the group emerges from the rubbish. Everyone's safe now, but Dave is upset about destroying his hard work. Harry cheers him up and tells him that at least he has a documentary to look up to. The group then cleans the mess and dumps the scraps outside. As they leave, the Minotaur emerges from the scrap along with an origami bird, ready to take revenge from humankind. If you want to watch movies similar to this one, you should check these recaps.